Good afternoon, everyone. As Jessica said, my name is Arlene Schiff. I am a nurse, education specialist with Elderwerks. I've been in the healthcare field my entire career, working with seniors and their families and guiding them through their caregiving journey for over 20. On a personal note, I have also been a caregiver for both of my parents, both in very different times of my life. So we'll give you some personal experiences as well as we go through today's program. Caregiving is really, from my perspective, one of the most meaningful things that we will ever do in our lives. It comes from a place of love, from responsibility, and often from really a deep place in our hearts that says, this is my person and I'm going to be there for them. But what we don't always talk about is truly how hard it can be. The exhaustion, the worry, the feeling that no matter how much you give, it never quite feels like enough. So I want you to understand that, we're not talking about judgment today. It's not about doing more. It's really about understanding what you're carrying and learning how to care for yourself while you're caring for someone else. Because it's important to understand that you matter in this journey and your health is important in this journey as well. I love this quote because it really reminds us of something that's really powerful, and caregiving touches all of us. As former First Lady Rosalind Carter said, there are only four kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are caregivers now, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need care someday. What all this means is that it's not someone else's issue. This is really a human experience. Many of you are here today because you're living this role right now. It's probably something that you didn't plan for, but it's something that, as I said, you stepped into out of love or responsibility, or perhaps because there was really just no one else there. And while caregiving can be incredibly meaningful, it can be overwhelming, exhausting, and even sometimes isolating. So we're going to talk about all of that. And because really understanding what caregivers go through is the first step towards taking care, really better care of yourself and not only the person that you love. Our objectives today are we'll define caregiver burnout. We're going to talk about the common feelings that are experienced with caregiver burnout, how it affects someone both physically and emotionally, tips to prevent caregiver burnout, and then we'll go through some sources of assistance as well. So almost every caregiver will experience some level of burnout at some point. And when it's not recognized or addressed, it doesn't just go away. It just builds over time. And eventually it can affect your ability to provide the kind of care that you want to give. So that's why caregiver burnout doesn't just impact the caregiver, it also impacts the person that's receiving the care. Research has shown that caregivers who experience high levels of stress and strain are at a greater risk for serious health problems themselves. So this isn't just about feeling tired or overwhelmed. This is truly about your health, your well-being, and your ability to continue in the caregiving role. And the good news is when we recognize the signs early, there's ways to prevent it from getting to that point of true burnout. And as you can see, it's the state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion that may be accompanied by a change in attitude from positive and caring to negative and unconnected. Burnout can occur when caregivers do not get the help they need or they try to do more than they are able, either physically, emotionally, or financially. So I want to pause for a moment before we go any further and just reflect. Take a look at these questions. There's no right or wrong answer here, and you don't have to say anything out loud or type anything in. I just want you to honestly answer these to yourselves. And, so let's go through these. Have you ever felt overwhelmed? Have you put your own needs last? Have you felt alone in this role? Have you felt guilty about perhaps taking time for yourself? Do you feel like you're always on and you don't get a break? Well, if you found yourself saying yes to even one of these, you're not alone. These are very real, very common experiences for caregivers. That feeling of always being on and putting yourself last and feeling guilty when you try to take a break. These are often early signs that the stress of caregiving is building. So we want to talk about that, what it feels like, and what we can do about it. Because again, recognizing it is the first step towards preventing burnout. Caregiving today is much more common and much more complex than ever before. I used to say post-COVID, the only highlight of COVID was that caregiving became a word that was in the forefront, and people recognized during COVID how important caregivers were, and it really became something that people started talking about and identifying, and identifying that caregivers need help as well. So right now, there's nearly 1 in 4 adults, about 63 million Americans that are providing care to a loved one. So if you ever felt like you're alone, think about those numbers. You're not. This role often becomes very significant with emotional and physical and financial strain. And many caregivers are balancing multiple responsibilities. 7 in 10 are also working, so they're trying to manage a job while caregiving. We also see that caregiving has become much more medically complex, and now caregivers are performing tasks that used to be done by healthcare professionals, and this is being done often without any formal training. And we know that the impact is real. About 1 in 5 caregivers report that their health is considered fair or poor, and many experience financial stress or take on debt that's related to their caregiving responsibilities. When we look at dementia caregiving, the demands can be even greater. These caregivers often provide even more hours of care, experience higher stress, face more emotional challenges, and at the same time, caregivers are so important. They are the backbone at this point of our healthcare system. Caregivers provide the majority of care that allows people to remain at home. And really interestingly, we know that when someone with dementia has a caregiver, it can actually reduce the healthcare cost and improve outcomes. So while caregiving is an act of love, it's a role that we know really comes with real challenges. So when we talk about caregiving, it's important to also recognize that not all caregivers have the same experience. One group that we often talk about is the sandwich generation. And these are people who are caring for aging parents while also raising children or supporting their own families. They're sandwiched in between both. And because people are living longer, many caregivers will find themselves in this role for years. I can relate to that personally. I spent many years supporting my mother while also managing my own life and responsibility. And then I did that again with my dad. So we know that many caregivers today are working full time. They're balancing a job, finances, caregiving responsibilities, and it's incredibly stressful. And for many, stepping away from work just isn't an option. Um, Cultural expectations play a role. In some families and cultures, caregiving is seen as a responsibility that should stay within the family. And today, with financial pressures and changing roles, that can be much harder to manage without any additional support. Also need to recognize that the LGBTQ plus community, those caregivers may face unique challenges. Some feel uncomfortable disclosing their relationships to healthcare providers. They may worry about being treated differently. And in some cases, their partners or their chosen family may not always be recognized in the same way. So that creates additional barriers to support and resources. Across all groups, though, one thing does remain the same. Caregiving is really rooted in love and dignity and respect. But we do need to understand that everyone's situation is unique, and we need to understand that those differences really help us better to support each other. Caregiver burnout, the causes, it doesn't happen all at once. It really builds over time, and it comes from a combination of many different types of pressures. One of the biggest is conflicting demands. You're trying to balance the needs of the person you're caregiving for, your job, your family, yourself. Something has to give. Many caregivers experience lack of control over finances, over resources, sometimes over decisions. On top of that, you can be expected to manage medical care or complex needs without this formal training. There's also loss of privacy. Caregiving can become all consuming, and then that leaves very little time or space just for you. Then there's a common challenge, which is role confusion. It can be very difficult to shift from being a partner or a spouse or a daughter or a son into being a caregiver. And that emotional shift isn't easy. And caregivers also face unrealistic expectations, and that's either from others or from themselves, especially with progressive conditions like dementia. And this is where despite your best efforts, things are going to continue to decline. Financial stress, a major factor. Many caregivers have to cut back on work or take time off or leave their jobs altogether. And this is at the same time that your expenses are increasing with medical care and medications and support services. And this adds up very quickly. Then you talk about isolation. Caregiving can be incredibly lonely. You may not be able to leave the house, or you may feel like others don't fully understand what you're going through. And then when all these factors come together over time, they can lead directly to burnout. And that's why recognizing them early is so important. The boots on the ground. Caregivers are truly the boots on the ground. They're the ones there every day. They're the ones seeing the changes, managing the details, providing that hands-on care. They often know the person better than anyone else. And that includes your healthcare providers. So because of that, caregivers play a critical role in communication and safety and overall quality of care. They're not just helpers, they are truly essential members of the care team. And many of you probably have experienced this. Again, you're the one that notices those subtle changes and asking questions and advocating when something doesn't feel right. So caregiving isn't just that one role. It's so many roles, often at the same time. Caregivers are providing hands-on help with daily activities like bathing and dressing and meals, as well as managing the more complex tasks like medication management, appointments, finances. They're care coordinators. They're making sure everything is organized, that the plan of care is being followed, and they become the information resource. They need to learn about the condition. They need to learn about the treatments, the medications, all the equipment. And again, this is often without formal training. They are advocates for that loved one. They need to speak up, ask questions, make sure their loved one's needs and preferences and dignity are all being respected. And then, most importantly, they're the emotional supports. They provide comfort, they provide reassurance, connection throughout this journey. And in so many cases, they're the first ones to notice the change. Small shifts that others might miss, or, the out of town family has no clue what's truly going on because you're watching the changes on a day-to-day basis. So when we say you're wearing many hats, we do really mean that. So we also know that, being a caregiver for someone you love can be incredibly meaningful, but it's emotionally exhausting. And over time, caregiving can begin to affect your mood. It can affect your energy, your relationships, even how you look and see yourself. So many caregivers describe that feeling as, being overwhelmed or anxious or emotionally drained. And we know that that's not uncommon. Recent data shows that about 1 in 5 caregivers report that their health is fair or poor. And that again reflects both on the emotional and the physical strain. So if you're feeling this way, it doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It really means you're human and your body is responding to the ongoing stress. Irritability, anxiety, feeling withdrawn, or losing interest in the things that you used to enjoy. These are some of the earliest warning signs of caregiver burnout. And if that stress continues and there's no additional support, these feelings then grow stronger over time. And again, that's why recognizing these signs early is so important. It gives you the opportunity to step in and make some changes and take care of yourself as well. We often think of stress as something emotional, but it just doesn't stay emotional all the time. It shows up in your body as well. And research shows that chronic stress and social isolation can have real and true physical effects. It impacts the immune system, the heart, how the brain functions. And that's why, many caregivers notice things like fatigue or headaches or body aches or changes in sleep or even just getting sick more often. When we're under constant stress, the body releases a hormone that's called cortisol. I'm sure you have all heard a lot about cortisol lately. In short bursts, that's okay, but when stress is ongoing and cortisol levels stay elevated, this leads to inflammation in the body. And that's been linked to conditions like high blood pressure, heart disease, weakened immune system. Studies also shown that caregivers under prolonged stress have a lower immune response. So that makes you more vulnerable to infections and slower to recover. It also affects the brain. It can really interfere with focus and memory and decision making and emotional regulation. So that's why some things you may feel like forgetful or overwhelmed or just drained. And the body's response to stress can feel similar to being physically ill, that general sense of exhaustion or low energy or just not feeling well. So that's why it's so important to understand that these physical symptoms aren't random. It's your body's way of telling you that it's under strain. And just like you'd respond to any other health concern, it's important that you pay attention and take those signals seriously. And we'll talk about some things that you can do. So, this short video that I'm going to play shows what happens in your brain and in your body when stress does become chronic. And it's something that many caregivers experience without even realizing it. There might be a small commercial before some of these videos that we'll see today. All right, one more time. I apologize. I'm not quite sure why it's not playing. It did just 10 minutes ago. Again, it's reinforcing what I said previously is that these chronic, when stress becomes chronic, it affects your cardiovascular system. It can affect your brain. And it's so that's why burnout isn't just stress. It's something that affects your whole body, and you need to be aware of it. And you need to take some steps, which we'll talk about, to relieve yourself of that chronic stress. And I also just want to mention compassion fatigue. It's a little different than burnout. Burnout builds over time, and fatigue can happen more suddenly. And it's in that moment when you feel emotionally drained, it becomes harder to feel empathetic, you lack patience. And even if it's for someone you love. And it does not mean that you don't care. It just means that you've been caring so much for so long that your emotional reserves are just depleted. And it's very common in caregiving, especially when you're constantly exposed to stress and illness or decline. And just like burnout, compassion fatigue is a signal. It's time to pause, recharge, get support. Okay, let's try this one. I'm sorry. For some reason, these videos are not coming up. The good news is the videos are really just reinforcing what I'm already sharing in the other slides with you. So I do apologize. Sometimes it's, easy to recognize burnout. When you see it. So that was the point of this. So you just need to think of the signs that we discussed and what your body is asking for, and it's looking for support. When you're fatigued or you're drained and you just feel like you can't keep going anymore. So now that we've talked a little bit about what burnout looks like, let's talk about what we can do to prevent it. And the good news is there are things that we can do to prevent it. So let's take a look. Self-care. Self-care is so important, but as caregivers, it's often the first thing that we put last. Um, it's Let me read you this quote. Many of us follow the commandment, love one another when it relates to caregiving. We must love one another with boundaries. We must acknowledge that we are included in the love one another. I remember um, when I was caring for my mom and I had a small child, someone shared with me that, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others. That's why they always say when you are on an airplane that you put your mask on first and then you put it on your child. You need to take care of yourself first, because if you don't take care of yourself, then you're not going to have enough energy to be able to take care of the person that you love. So self-care doesn't have to be complicated and it looks different for everyone. It might be something simple like sitting quietly with a cup of coffee or taking a bath or reading a book or just having a few uninterrupted minutes for yourself. But the key is that it's intentional and it's time that's just for you. And you need to remember that if you truly want to be there for the person that you care for, you have to take care of yourself first. So when someone says, "What can I do to help?" that's your opportunity to ask them for something specific, even if it's just an hour of time so you can step away and recharge. Um, Physical health, taking care of your physical health is one of the most important parts, excuse me, of preventing burnout. Simple things like eating well, getting enough sleep, moving your body can make a real difference in how you feel, both physically and emotionally. So it's important. Listen to your body. If you're constantly tired or getting sick more often, feeling run down, those are signs that your body needs attention. Exercise doesn't have to mean going to the gym. It can be as simple as taking a walk, stretching, just getting outside for a few minutes. And sleep is critical. When you're not getting enough rest, everything feels harder. Your patience, your focus, your ability to cope. And so you can't underestimate the importance of downtime. Even short breaks throughout the day can help your body reset. It may sound like these are small things, but over time, they really have a big impact on your overall well-being. Emotional wellness, breathing and relaxation techniques, talking to someone about what's going on, being part of a support group, nurturing positive relationships, that's all about emotional wellness. And the ability to be in the present moment is a major component of mental health. This is a reminder that even 1 minute of meditation can help you. And it's something that you can do at any time during the day. You can do it before bed. You can do it in the car. You can do it during a stressful moment. And if you don't quite understand how to meditate or what that means, there are apps that you can download that you can just listen to, and they have 1 minute sessions, 5 minute sessions, 10 and on up. But it's something that just gives you an opportunity again to reset, and that even 1 minute can make a big difference. One of the most helpful things you can do as a caregiver is to set realistic goals for yourself each day. It's easy to feel like you have to do everything, but that's not realistic and it's certainly not sustainable. So try making like a simple to-do list, keeping it focused on the most important things that truly need to get done. And then when you accomplish things, give yourself credit for that. Even checking one or two things off of your list is progress. And be honest with yourself about what you can reasonably do in a day, especially on those harder days. Some days will look different than others, and that's okay. We're not talking about perfection here. It's just about creating a sense of control and reducing unnecessary stress. Educate yourself. I did then what I knew how to do, and now that I know better, I do better. So the more you understand the condition of the person that you're caring for, the more confident and prepared you'll feel. Education really helps you know what to expect and reduces the fear of the unknown. So it can help you make better decisions, and then it can help you then advocate more effectively. So again, you don't need to know everything. Just take things one step at a time. Communication, it is the key in caregiving, and that includes asking for and accepting help. Many people want to help, but they don't always know what you need. So be specific. Whether it's running an errand or sitting with your loved one or giving you a short break. And just as important is when help is offered, try to accept it because you don't have to do this alone. When my father was living with me, and he also had a caregiver that was living with me during COVID. Um, it was very stressful. I was working full time and also caring for him, and felt like I was also caring for the caregiver. And I had kids living at home. Um, and I also had two brothers that lived out of town. And what I asked them to do was send in a dinner once a week. It helped me tremendously. And not only did it help me, it helped my dad know that his boys were thinking of him on a weekly basis. And they would call and say, Dad, what do you want for dinner? And then they would send that dinner in. So it was really a joyful moment for my dad, and it was a great help for me as well. So forgiveness is not something we do for other people. It's something we do for ourselves to move on. It's an important part of caregiving. And again, that includes forgiving yourself. There'll be moments of frustration, impatience, guilt. It's all a part of being human. Giving yourself grace means recognizing that you're doing the best you can in a very challenging situation. So sometimes it means letting go of unrealistic expectations of both yourself and of others. And, holding on to anger or guilt, it only adds to your stress. So when you practice forgiveness and give yourself grace, you create a little more space for patience, understanding, and peace. I'll express my guilt in the moment. When my dad, again during COVID, he was living in an independent living community, and when the first case of COVID was diagnosed, I had him and the caregiver move in with us. And I give these talks, and I supposedly as an expert, and I tell people how to get their homes ready for their loved one. And about 2 months in, I had made changes in the shower and the bath, and the caregiver came to me and said, "Do you think we could get some grab bars for your dad? Because that would be really helpful." I looked in the mirror and I shook my head and I said, "Oh my God, how how could I have not prepared for this? How could I have not known that this was going on in my house for 2 months?" And I felt terrible that I had made it more difficult for my dad to take a daily shower, which he loved to do, without being able to hold on to grab bars. So you need to practice that forgiveness. Give yourself grace. We don't need to do this perfectly. You just really have to keep showing up. So, I want to talk a little bit about respite care. Um, Caregivers attract caregivers and live in a community of love. They're energized by their caring, fulfilled, and they love life. Respite care simply is a break for the caregiver. It provides short-term relief, whether that's for a few hours, a day, even longer, but it's to provide you with some rest so you can recharge, so you can take care of your own needs. And this can take place in your own home. It can be an adult day setting. It can be in a residential setting. There are communities that offer respite services, and your loved one can move into a community for a period of time to provide respite. Sometimes caregivers hesitate to use respite care because you feel like it's too hard to explain the routines, or, you worry that nobody can do it as well as you can, or you feel guilty that you're stepping away. But the reality is, taking a break shouldn't be considered a luxury. It's really a necessity. It benefits you, but it also benefits the person that you're caring for because providing stimulation, socialization, as well as a change of routine can help both of you, and it can help prevent burnout. It reduces stress. It allows you the opportunity to continue caregiving in a healthier way. And remember, you got to think of it that you can't provide the best care if you're not taking care of yourself. If you're completely exhausted, you can't provide the best care for your loved one. So we've talked a lot about the challenges of caregiving, but it's really also important to take a moment to reflect on the rewards, recognizing that these moments can be a real boost to your emotional well-being. For many, caregiving may reflect your values, your love, your sense of responsibility, or even maybe a promise that you made to someone important in your life. And some rewards are obvious, some are more quiet. Those moments of connection, those moments of joy, a smile, a sense of purpose, or just simply knowing that you made someone's day a little better. I'd like to pause for just a moment. If anyone is comfortable and they want to type in and share a reward that you've experienced as a caregiver. Again, for me, it truly was the joy of my life, outside of having my children, but to be able to care for my parents who cared for me, their lives. So that brought me joy to have a home that was multi-generational. I was a person who loved COVID because I had my kids living with their grandparents for the first time in their lives. And what a joy that was to be able to have our whole family together on a daily basis. So those were the rewards that I found as a caregiver. So again, if any of you want to share, please type it in the chat. But these moments really matter. These are the moments that are a result of all the care and the time and the love and the energy that you give every day. And they shouldn't be overlooked. And you need, again, to give yourself some grace in that. So one of the most important shifts in caregiving is learning to redefine what success looks like. Sometimes it means adjusting your expectations and letting go of the way things used to be. This is especially true during holidays and other special occasions. When you're considering your loved one's needs and where they are in their journey, you begin to make small changes that create more meaningful and less stressful experiences for everyone. For example, with dementia, changes in routine or environment can become overwhelming. So you may find your loved one becomes more tired more quickly, or wants to leave early, or feels uncomfortable in unfamiliar settings. So instead of trying to recreate the past, it's about creating new memories and adapting to what works now and make new experiences and make new paths for family celebrations and occasions. So it may mean a shorter visit. It might mean a quieter setting. It might mean that you need to have a plan in place, especially if you feel they need to leave early or if they want to leave early. So success may not look like, a full day of activities or what you first imagined. It might just be sharing a meal or that moment of connection or even just a peaceful visit. So when we shift our expectations, we can reduce that stress, allow ourselves to appreciate what is rather than what we wish it could be. One of the biggest challenges in caregiving is that people say, let me know if you need anything. And then the problem is we don't always know what to say. Or we say, I'm fine. Thank you, but I don't need anything. Well, that's where this wish list can help. I love this. If I waited until I had all my ducks in a row, I'd never get across the street. Sometimes you just got to gather up what you got and make a run for it. So that's again where that wish list can help. Um, think of it just as a simple list that other people can do certain things to support you. They can be small, specific, realistic tasks. Picking up groceries, sitting with your loved one for an hour, running an errand, or just checking in, with a phone call. We even with all the grandkids, we had each of the grandkids. They were on a call, a routine call that they would, on Mondays, Jamie would call, and on Tuesdays, Jake would call. So Grandpa would get a call every day, and it made his day that his grandkids were checking in. And the most joyful thing to me was that they put this list together on their own. So they put together a phone list because they wanted to make sure that Grandpa was experiencing some joy every day, and his grandchildren was what brought him joy. So, when you make a list like that, whether it's, helping with a meal or grocery shopping or taking your loved one to a doctor's appointment to give you a break, it that list can make it much easier to accept help when it's offered. You can take a look at the list and say, "Oh, you have an hour on Wednesday? Great. I would love to be able to go get my hair cut." So it takes the pressure off of others trying to guess what you need. And it's important to remember that people want to help, and giving them a clear way to do that benefits really all of you. This slide really speaks to one of the hardest but most important parts of caregiving, and that's again learning to accept and adapt. Um, Sadness comes from expectations to be happy, adapt to everything, and expect nothing. As the quote reminds us, most of our stress comes from expectations. And when we begin to adjust those expectations, we can create more peace in the moment. And caregiving often means letting go of the way things used to be, especially around those holidays and family gatherings. So, you may need to allow someone else to take on the roles that you once held, like hosting or planning events. You might be the person that always had Thanksgiving. Now somebody else needs to handle that. Those visits might need to be shortened, or plans might need to be simplified. But you might need to choose activities based on what's most comfortable, not just for your loved one, but for you as well. So, instead of trying to do everything, the goal becomes doing what feels manageable and meaningful. And again, adapting means recognizing that a quiet moment together can be just as valuable as this full day of a grand celebration. So, when we shift from how it should be to what works right now, then we can reduce our stress and create space to have those positive experiences. Asking for help isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. Have you ever heard that before? I think we've all heard that many times. And caregiving was never meant to be done alone. Support can come from so many different places. There are local community programs, the respite care services, social workers, counselors, therapists. The important thing here is to reach out and take that first step. Everything that we're talking about is even small amounts. Small amounts of help can make a big difference in reducing that stress and preventing burnout. The goal here is to understand you don't have to carry everything by yourself. Sometimes the bravest thing that you can do is simply to say, "I need help." Gratitude. Gratitude turns what we have into enough. and then more. It turns denial into acceptance, chaos into order, confusion into clarity. It makes sense of our past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow. Gratitude doesn't change the situation you're in, but it can change how you experience it. Even in difficult moments, finding something to be grateful for can really shift your perspective. It really can help bring a sense of calm, of balance to your life, and and meaning as well to that caregiving journey. And it doesn't have to be big. Again, sometimes that one quiet moment, that one connection, that one moment of joy, one good day. Gratitude helps us focus on what we have, not just on what we've lost. And gratitude doesn't change your situation, but it can change how you experience it. And even on the hard days, finding just one small moment of gratitude can shift your mindset. Want to provide you with some information on respite care. There's many ways to access respite care, and it doesn't have to be formal or even expensive. Um, some caregivers will start by asking family or friends to help for short periods of time. I remember growing up, my grandfather lived with us, and my mom needed a break. So she called one of her brothers, and he took my grandfather in for one weekend every month to give her a bit of a break. There's community resources, adult day programs, volunteer organizations, local support services. You can find help through organizations like Family Caregiver Alliance, Elder Care Locator, ARCH, National Respite Network. AARP Caregiver Resources is a tremendous resource. Some services provide in-home care while others, offer care outside the home. And it's important to know that coverage varies. Medicare may cover short-term respite in specific situations like hospice. Medicaid or local programs may offer additional support as well. The key is to plan ahead, explore options as early as you can. So when you need a break, you already know where you can turn. And always remember, asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's really more part of being a strong and sustainable caregiver. And also, if you're not sure where to start, Elder Care Locator is often the easiest first step, and it can connect you to local services in your area. And as always, you can also contact Elderwerks as well. And so this is Elder Care Locator. In the state of Illinois, you can dial 211 and it can connect you to services in your community. And again, that's the Elder Care Locator. In Illinois, AARP and United Way have partnered to expand 211's reach for caregivers. And again, it offers free caregiving guides and tools from AARP, like advice on making your home safe, managing finances, legal documents, and finding respite. And it's 211illinois.org as well. There's local resources and referrals for support groups, in-home help, transportation, other services tailored to caregiving needs. You can find at the AARP caregiving resources as well. You can contact the Alzheimer's Association if that's what you're dealing with, and please don't ever hesitate to contact Elderwerks. We have advisors that can help guide you with education and resources as well. Want to leave you with this. If you take one thing away today, you're not alone. Your feelings are valid. Taking care of yourself isn't selfish. The saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. I want to leave you with the understanding, and from my heart, caregiving is one of the most selfless and meaningful roles that you'll ever have. But it can't come at the cost of losing yourself. You know, you're not just a caregiver. You're a person that has needs, that has limits, and a life that deserves care too. So you need to remember taking care of yourself is not selfish, it's a necessity. And because the better you care for yourself, the better you can then continue to care for the person that you love. And you deserve that care as much as they do. So again, reach out for support.